We are Science Fiction Remnant, a podcast for sci-fi lovers spanning across books, movies, TV shows, and games.
This is Season 1, Episode 39, Anime, Dr. Stone, for March 13, 2021.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. Thank you so much for coming back.
This means a lot to us. We hope that you find this episode as exciting to listen to as it was for us to create for you.
If you like the show and know someone who might like this podcast, please share it. It would help us greatly in growing this channel.
You can also follow us on Twitter at Sci-Fi Remnant and share any comments you have about this podcast with your friends and family. We appreciate it.
This podcast is a proud member of the Let's Chat Club. Find out how you can become a member by going to the website letschatpodcast.net.
Hello everyone, I just wanted to mention that you could actually make your own podcast too, with Anchor.
Let me explain to you guys. It has one of my favorite things. It's free.
Yeah, we like free. There's creation tools that allow you to, you can record, you can edit, you can do anything right on your computer, you can do it on the phone.
So it doesn't matter where you are, really. If you're passionate talking about something, this app is for you if you want just to share with anybody around the world.
Yeah, the Anchor will even help you distribute your podcasts to platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
So it's like you don't even have to worry about the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and you can even make money.
Yeah, then there's no minimum listenership or anything like that. So, I mean, you can take your time, you can share your material and reach out to the public.
Yep, everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, so this week we're talking about another anime. Dr. Stone.
Get excited. I had to say that.
I don't know if you guys have seen this anime. It really called my attention. Giancarlo's actually showed me this for the first time. I never knew this anime was out there. But it called my attention because it actually shows the importance of science.
Actually, if you think about it, this show is a master class for science from the ground up. That's what I like about this show.
So it was released in July 5th, 2019. And I can't believe I never ever heard of that before. The show is really good. And the premise of the show is something happened. And I like to estimate there was when this happened at the beginning of the show, it was 2019.
Yeah, current time.
Current time. And obviously current time for the time that the show was, released. And there was a flash. And the flash...
it was like a green light that covered all of the face of the earth.
Yeah, it covered the entire earth. And as that wave was going around the planet, every human and bird...
It was a swallow bird.
Swallowbird and
only
human.
That one.
They all turned to stone. And that was a question too that I wonder, and I don't think they really explained in the anime as to why specifically
the swallowbird
and the humans and not monkeys or dogs or cats or everything else was okay, but the humans and the swallow birds. And so basically we have a little flashback in the first episode that we watch where we see this young kid. He's a high school kid that is a genius.
And God, his hair is magazine material.
The hair, yeah. It must have taken a lot to get that hair the way it was.
Well, he has it all the time like that, so I don't know what the heck he did to it.
Gorilla glue.
Yeah.
Those wonders for your hair.
I would think something stronger than that, maybe like masking tape.
So this kid, he, since he was a very young boy, he always, was very interested into science. He always wanted to be an astronaut. So we get to see him building things. I mean, things that, and as a kid, the things that he's building would be things that maybe a teenager would be building.
These are the kind of stuff, in my mind, they are like science projects for teenagers. And this boy is making them with 7, 8 years.
Yeah. And you get to see. I mean, even when he's a teenager, he's building things that would belong in a company.
Honestly, I mean, the first thing that we see when the show starts, they are in high school.
Yes.
He's the president. He's the youngest president of, I think it's like a science department on school.
Yes.
And on top of that, what is he doing? He's working with a machine that decomposes plastic bottles and makes gasoline out of it.
Yes.
He's doing this on school.
On school grounds.
In a small machine.
So it is very apparent from the moment that we see his name is Senku. Very apparent for the moment we see that he is a prodigy. He is definitely a genius. Mm-hmm. And he is really good in science. Mm-hmm. And we get little hints throughout the show where, he has expertise or minor expertise in basically everything.
Yeah.
So, it's not something that you normally see in real life, obviously. But then again, we're watching, number one is a sci-fi, number two is an anime. So everything goes. But
although I wouldn't doubt that people like that exist.
Yeah. I mean, you can. The reason why I said you don't see that in real life is because a scientist, which is what is being implied that Senku is, usually has
it branches out to some specific specialty.
Because, and I understand because you can't really study everything.
Yeah.
So you have to like pick one of the things that calls your attention the most, and you can concentrate on that. Mm-hmm. But I can see how Senku, although it's not apparent what his special talent is within science, you can see that he's very passionate about science in general, and all the other stuff. It's kind of like, while we might work in computers and have a hobby in baseball, he work in science and his hobby is science.
Yes.
And he's very, he's very passionate. He seemed to be more interested in science than everything else. While all the boys his age are like looking at girls, mm-hmm. It's not that he doesn't like girls, because it's very implied. It's just
his priority is not girls.
Yeah, it's just science. Mm-hmm. What I can do with science. So this is the kid. Among the entire planet, obviously, that was turned to stone, and we see the premise of the show is he's woken up after 3,700 years. Mm-hmm. So the planet has been without humans for 3,700 years.
Mm-hmm. There's not a single building standing.
Yes.
I mean, think about it. They show you when he gets petrified. He's standing on a maybe third floor in a high school hallway.
Yeah, because when the green glow came in, he was looking out the window wondering what that glow was.
No, and he was looking out the window. What's the name of his friend?
Taiju.
Taiju was going to declare himself to the girl that he likes. Mm-hmm. So everybody was watching outside, actually betting that she was going to hurt his feeling or something. But like they show you before that like they kind of were alike and they like each other. But like everybody was looking outside because he was gonna go after 5 years of like having a crush on her.
Yes,
he was gonna tell her, and right when he's about to talk, that thing happens.
So now instead of waiting 5 years, now he had to wait 3,700 years to talk to the girl and tell him, hey, I like you.
Quite a wait.
Oh man!
But what I was trying to say is, mm-hmm. when he wakes up, there's nothing left of a building in anywhere. Like anywhere that you see around is just nature.
Yes, and
Cliffs
nature,
and mountains and hills.
nature completely overtook everything. And it's something really cool that I find about, let's say, about planet Earth. You know, and we can see, like, if you Google abandoned cities and stuff like that. It was, something that it was displayed in that movie that we made the episode on, Brolga, where you have, the planet, nature will take its place back eventually.
Yeah.
Now, because of the human's lifespan, we don't see this happen because, we live typically about 100 years.
Time works differently for nature.
Exactly. But, this show brings that into perspective because, we live an average of, let's say, 100 years, and we might move from location. So our civilization might grow and grow. And there's certain parts that get forgotten, and that's how we see those. And when you search for Google for abandoned places. But this show brings into perspective what happened is that abandonment of a city, in this case, the entire planet, happens for longer than our time span, which in this case is more than 3,000 years. And that's exactly what I would expect Earth to do. Not only overtake its proper place, but completely destroyed. So, with time and erosion, obviously, what, previously were buildings and cars and airplanes. So in this case, after all that time, all we see is nature.
Yes. And I have an observation. I wouldn't say as much as that nature destroys, but our own structures probably crumble to the ravage of time.
Exactly. So, like, for example, there was a scene when they were showing a dam, right? Like the Hoover Dam, right? So what happens if you don't give maintenance? It cracks.
Becomes a flow.
Eventually, it breaks. It crumbles.
Creates fluids and new canals and rivers.
Yeah. So eventually, if you and let's go back to the show. Let's say, for example, you look within this show, you look at the Hoover Dam, you will not recognize where it was because it would just be a river. And of course, land masses move.
It will be a river if it's not dry because of change of flow from whatever the main source of water. That's the other thing. It's been so long that I would venture to say even the biology of Earth has continued to evolve. Not saying that that plants change, but like some rivers will run dry while others would start flowing out. Land masses, they move slowly. Yeah, the tectonic plates.
We don't get to see big changes because of our time span. But in 3,000 years, they would probably be a lot more noticeable to someone if you were able to last that long to see the difference. And that brings me to another question. We're bringing out the 3,700 number, 3,700 year number. And I remember when I was watching the show for the first time, I was wondering, how is it that Senku knows exactly how long, has passed since the moment that he was petrified? And this is a discussion that me and Giancarlo were having. In the show, he says that he was counting. Counting seconds to be specific. We know that he's a scientist. We know that he's really good. He must be really good at, as a mathematician. You need to be good with numbers if you're dealing with science. And not necessarily you have to be a mathematical genius, but you need numbers for science. So it is apparent that he would be better in numbers than your average person. I'm not claiming that he's a mathematician in any way. He is a scientist. So he says that he's counting the seconds until he wakes up. And when he calculated it all up, it was a total of, as a matter of fact, if you watch the episode, he actually tells Taiju that is the year 5738, which is, if you count back from 2019, is technically 3,719 years. So that brings a question that we were discussing. A human being, I don't think that you could be in a state of awareness, isolated from social interaction for a long time. It actually causes paranoia. There's a long laundry list.
Psychosis.
Or psychological issues.
Yeah.
And this you could see, like, if you watch the movie Castaway, for example, and at Tom Hanks, when he comes back to civilization, you notice this effect. Obviously, it's a movie, but this is why, humans are social animals. We need to be social. And isolation normally will cause this. Now, this is worse than isolation.
This is not mere physical isolation.
You are petrified.
It's like you're put in a coma and you are not coming out of it, but you're not dying either.
Exactly. So, most people, will not be able to keep calm. So, without keeping calm, the psychological effects will be actually worse because fear kicks in. And we could see this because at the beginning, you can hear some of the people complaining. It's like, what's going on? I can't move. I can't see.
Freaking out.
And they're freaking out. The fear kicks in. And that fear will actually make you go mad on a situation like that. Also, I think. What is your thought on that?
My thought? Yes, that makes total sense. And, if you think about it, one observation that I had while watching the show is that not everybody had the ability to stay conscious.
That's what I was getting to.
A lot of people that woke up actually gave you that idea, like they felt like they were on a slumber.
Yes.
Dreamless slumber. For the whole time they were sleeping, while some of them had some rate of consciousness and some of them had none, right?
Correct.
But besides that, like even him, he kind of he tried to give you an explanation on his consciousness. Like he said, if I'm not mistaken, he said that he could count up to 800,000 before losing consciousness, and then he made the calculation too about how long in like measuring a daytime that was taking him. So after that, he was able just to look at the daytime and count with that, calculating how long it took him to lose his consciousness. So he was not literally just counting and counting.
Yeah.
He probably created markers so he wouldn't have to count per se, but look at other time frames that will tell him, okay, so many thousand seconds have happened.
Yes.
And just keep on adding up.
I was thinking, if he is able to, assuming that he's calculating the numbers that he was able to count as he was conscious without filling in the blanks, what percentage of that entire time, regardless of how big the time must be, would you say it would be safe for a human to remain sane under those circumstances? For some reason, I want to say 10%, but I don't know what your thought is.
That would be an accurate way to put it. My thought about it, the way that I think I see it more from a spiritual point of view, when that would happen to a person, imagine our question about death, right? What do we know about death? We don't know really nothing. There's a lot of hypotheses and things that people think there, but there's no proof. So if you think about it, this will be like death. You're just shut in your own consciousness on a dark room.
Yes.
You cannot move. You cannot go anywhere. You're still conscious. Usually, a person that will have sanity and normal level of sanity like he has, I will venture to say you have to be enlightened.
Yes.
That's the only thing, because once you're enlightened, you're given to the present. It doesn't matter how things are. You're accepting of it, and it does not interfere in your perception or who you are anymore. Mm-hmm. But then again, being enlightened is not something that you can go to the corner in the market and buy it. It's actually very difficult to achieve.
I believe he's enlightened to a certain point because of the level of science and this kind of stuff that he knew, the kind of stuff that he can do. He has a different level of perception of what is around him and what is humanity, completely different than everybody that was surrounding him at that time. Mm-hmm. And notice how I said that, because obviously there have been, at that time, there had been a lot of scientists and people that I believe might be a lot more intelligent and more able than he is. But we don't see them. Mm-hmm. And it just happens that he is the first one to wake up. Mm-hmm. So the reason I was thinking that is this, thought experiment, let's call it that way, changed my perception of the show. So going back to the question, I believe that maybe about 10% of the time conscious out of all the time that he was petrified.
Now, how do you come to the number of 10%? Just a wandering thought?
Just a wandering thought, because anything higher than that, he would not be able to come out of a 3,000 year slumber as sane as he is. For all I know, it could be a 2% or 1%.
One thing that leaves me wonder, I don't know if you remember, we were watching the channel Because of Science the other day, mm-hmm. and he was talking about immortality, and he was saying after 3,000 years, we should not be able to remember some things because there's certain limited amount of space to our brain.
So you prove my point right there.
So right there also, it also leads me to wonder, there's a lot of data, but I mean, we're nitpicking to kind of debunk the show by saying this, but if you think about it, he should not even remember everything science as it is, because by that time, the things that you think you remember mm-hmm. are thoughts that you're replaying in your head that go changing inside of your head every time that you replay them. Because basically, how can I put it? It's like the phone game, mm-hmm. but it's happening inside of your own head. When you replay information, and it's never from the beginning 100% accurate. That's just human margin error. Yeah. Now you multiply that by replaying it, it just goes losing the integrity of the information over time.
Yeah. So let me give you a little thought experiment that we never discussed before. Let's assume that 10% is the number. Mm-hmm. Okay? That means that he, out of the 3,000 plus, let's say 3,700 years that he was in slumber mm-hmm. or petrified, 370 of those years he was awake. That still is a high number to keep sanity.
Yes. Now, here's my thought. Even though there are not any, how can I put it? Even though there are not structures left from society, mm-hmm. I'm not sure if they actually find a statue on the first and the second episode. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if a statue made out of copper would survive 37,000 years. And another thing is, it leaves me wonder, I'll spoil it out because it's part of it, but there is actually one little village of people that were there before that were not petrified.
Yeah, but we already know what happened.
We know what happened. Now, wouldn't you think, I mean, why didn't it take us so long to evolve in previous society, and humans will stay on Stone Age for 37,000 years?
Those are a lot of unanswered questions.
Because if you think about it, we can go 10,000 BC, so it will be right now, what, 12,000 years, right?
No, but you know what? It does make sense. If you look at the time frame of civilization,
3,000 years, it's all right. But like 37,000 years, and like you see, there's some smart people that come from these other generation of people that were not petrified. So I would venture to think that in 37,000 years, there will be quite few technological advances. Actually, supposedly, we are not 37,000 years out of Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that, I mean, our evolving process when it comes to our intellect and adaptability with new tools, it would happen the same way.
Well, that brings a good question. We remember that documentary we saw where the average, from the first moment a human being built a structure until now, we can estimate that it has been 20,000 years.
20,000 years. Yeah.
So this is 2021. So that's a big amount of years where we were
on the blank, living in caves like animals.
So if you have that in perspective, the show kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
If you look at it in that perspective.
That's true.
Because it has been 3,700 years. And we got to where we at right now after 20,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the question as to how he kept saying on 10%, and that's just my assumption, the show never mentioned it, this is just me calculating, I think the number has to be a lot less than that, because that would mean that he's awake 370 years. And someone awake for 370 years in isolation, I think still will go mad.
Yeah, although it's better than 3,000 years.
Yeah. So this is going to bring back your question about how humanity stayed in the Stone Age all that time. And maybe bring your thought into a valid perspective, because if you think about, let's assume that it's 10%, which we know is not. It has to be a lot less than that, right?
And I have a reason why it's not 300 and something years. I can assure you that. I can give you the reason why it's not.
Yeah, no, but look at my argument, right? Let's assume that it's 10%.
Mm-hmm.
That means out of the 3,700 years, he was awake for 370, which I don't agree.
Okay.
Someone awake for 370 years will be insane. But let's just, for the sake of the argument, let's say it's 10%. If you calculate how the total time, assuming that the time that he calculated, the 3,700 years, was at 10% that he was able to count while he was conscious, this means that the actual time that passed is around 37,000 years, not 3,700 years. Knowing this, what you said about civilization makes sense. Because at that point, they should have been where we at right now.
I got some interesting information that actually proves that your hypothesis might be on the right.
Go ahead.
So I wouldn't, just out of curiosity, because I don't know if you remember, they showed he's trying to navigate, and they realized that the axis of the Earth has tilted ever since.
Yes.
So much time has happened.
Yeah.
Now, just so you know, I don't know if you remember, they actually show a drawing of how much it tilts. It's not very much, but it's some.
Yeah. The
Earth axis actually tilts about 22.1 to 24.5 degrees on 41,000 years span.
Wow.
So
it
it actually, you might be on the right that it is not 3,700 but 37,000 years. That's a closer number to the actual tilt they demonstrate on the planet.
That even matches my assumption.
Yeah.
Because remember, we're talking about 10% being 37,000 years, but we know it's not 10%. So it's a lot more than 37,000 years.
Chances are.
So the 40, 45 sounds a lot more accurate. Maybe even more than the 37,000. So, this is the kind of stuff that we actually think about when we watch a show. All those questions, and I know this is a sci-fi show. We should take everything with a grain of salt, because that's the reason why that's the reason why I watch sci-fi, is to escape mentally. It's a mental vacation from the everyday, but I cannot help it. I cannot help it, and obviously, you can't help yourself either.
No.
So this show it's so amazing because he's waking up from his slumber, and he obviously is in the middle of the jungle. There's civilization is not like he remembered. There's absolutely nothing survived, and he is bent on reviving civilization. And he said he's gonna kick it into high gear. He's gonna use all his knowledge to bring civilization into the modern age as he remembered that was.
Knowledge of science. Get excited.
That always gets me. Every time he gets something interesting, or he's thinking about something he's gonna do, he always uses that phrase. It's the show, and I don't know, you probably noticed this too. The show is modeled as if you're playing a game.
Yes, it is.
So
it actually is.
So, like, for example, when he goes, let's say, for example, copper, right? And he discovers copper. They have this little banner on the bottom that says "Copper acquired."
And they do that for every little thing that he gets that is like a new kind of evolution or tool.
And it's like
acquired.
Acquired. And that's it. One of the cool things is that, and why I said this at the beginning, this show shows you the importance of science, because you could see him going through life and encountering challenge, and he uses science to overcome that challenge. In every episode, there's a multitude of challenges that he overcomes. Now, it makes it really interesting because he comes up with this thought, like, for example, and again, I know we're discussing the first episode, but we finished the entire season, so we kind of go back and forth through the episodes. But one of the points that one of the episodes brings a point that I want to make is when he's talking about creating a car or a cell phone, and
a light bulb.
Yeah. And those are things that, kind of, you take it for granted. You're hearing my voice right now, and but if you watch the anime, you realize what I'm talking about. They're in the middle of nowhere. Civilization is completely gone. Nature is completely overrun. People are living in either caves or cabins.
Like little huts.
Like little huts. And there he is, bringing electricity and scientific...
Creating engines.
Creating beakers to do scientific experiments.
Creating gunpowder. Anything. But here's the funny thing. If you want to break it down, just think about it. It's just like this world, when you're standing, you want to do anything, want to make anything that was consider technology, you have to go back to the raw materials. You have to literally go and mine the material from the ground, process it, have it ready so you can assemble a part of whatever you're trying to build.
It's amazing because, granted, it's not a class in science, but he shows the scientific process where he was, he's trying to discover how is it that he woke up, right? So he starts, assuming things like he was in a cave. It was related to the feces from
the urine
from
it had nitrate acid.
So he started, okay, so this must be related. So he started pouring that into a bird. It didn't work. So then he started thinking, okay, what was, so he
examined the environment or whatever he was and the conditions that allow him to become again non-petrified, and he tries to replay it over and over and over with different ways of experimenting.
So he comes up with a theory, and from that theory he brings an experiment. That didn't work. He goes back to the theory, alters his perceptions, make another experimenting, and this is how he brought his friend Taiju back. Because at the end of this experimental process, he was able to
discover the mix of what he needed.
Exactly. So this is at its heart. This is the scientific process where you go and
trial and errors.
The failing is what teaches you. So you learn from your mistakes. You go back to the drawing board, and he does that through the entire show. Also in creating things, when he's going to build something, it fails the first couple of times that he does it, and he continues until it actually creates it. What happened with the light bulb? How many times did they broke it when they turned it on because the filament was breaking? It was breaking the glass. It was not vacuum.
They continued to burn. It burned off.
So while this is not a class, obviously,
it teaches you.
I feel like this actually shows you what the scientific process is, and in essence, try to help us get excited, pun intended, get excited about science.
Honestly, when I watched the first episode, it made me feel like going to the backyard and just grab dirt and make stuff up, and I was like, oh shit.
And many things he tells you, go try it out. Like, for example, when he created a funnel, like, how is water going up a hose? And he said, okay, go to your bathtub right now and use this, and you'll see how the water, the bathtub is going to empty it out because the water is going to travel up instead of travel down. When he did the wine,
yes,
he's telling you. So Taiju said, oh, so this is just a waiting game. He said, yeah, pretty much. You go, you mush the grapes, and he says you just mix them every day until they're done. Granted, it doesn't give you the entire process. It doesn't tell you how long it is. But I think the whole idea for the show is showing you how, get you excited about the science in everyday life. And you kind of look at this.
Usefulness.
You can't help but realize all the stuff that we take for granted.
Yes. That's for sure.
You see him struggle and you're like, wow, how important lights are. How important electricity is. Water, like bathroom and stuff like that you really don't take for
how many tools that we use on a daily basis.
Exactly. The most important thing.
Most people, they will go nuts without their cell phones.
Exactly.
Like, most people will not be okay if you just drop them in the middle of Stone Age and tell them to survive. They're gonna be like, okay, I don't know where to even start.
So this is one of the cool things about this show is it just gets you going and everything that. When was it that you saw this show for the first time? I mean, I cannot believe that this show has been going on since 2019, and I only heard of it recently.
So I didn't know about the show neither. I'm always talking with friends to find new shows, and this friend of mine, he told me about Dr. Stone And also, he told me about another show that I want to get you into too, but that one is not sci-fi. It's called Golden Kamuy. Mm-hmm. And I started Dr. Stone. I even haven't continued the other one. Like, I watched the first season and I stopped. But Dr. Stone, like, I just couldn't stop watching it. It's like one of those shows that you watch them and you cannot stop watching. And when you finish, because there's no more episodes, you feel that your life is empty.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me. I started watching, I was, okay, the shows are short, and it got to the point where by the end of the first episode, I just had to have the next one and the next one until I finished the entire season. Mm-hmm. It's one of those shows that you can't, you have to continue to see it.
Mm-hmm. That's just what I felt when I watch it. And I mean, think about it. The story is perfectly built, very clever way, because the way that it's made, when it starts, it just starts creating questions over questions over questions in your head on what's going on. And it's not like they answer it all at once for you. They go giving you bits and bits, and as they go giving you bits and bits, they will give you lots and lots more of questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I just remember a question that you brought up that we kind of got sidetracked is going back to how the civilizations stayed the way they are. And I know we're going to go away a little to explain this from the first episode. Mm-hmm. But later we discovered that Senku's dad, which is not his biological father, because his son wanted to be an astronaut. He wanted to be an astronaut also, but because his son wanted to be an astronaut, he made extra effort, and his son Senku actually helped him out. So he got to the point where he said, I have to do this. I mean, my son is doing all this stuff. He's going out of his way to make my dream a reality. And in a way, we know that he wanted to make his dream a reality because that's also Senku's dream. Mm-hmm. So he became an astronaut. And by the time that the green glow took over the entire planet and turned everyone into stone, he, along with other astronauts, were at the space
ISS,
station.
Yeah.
The ISS. So they were completely safe from the
whatever
the
radiation or something like that.
It looks like it might have been radiation. We still don't know what it is. I like to hope that somewhere down the line in the show they explain
and I think they might give that to us at some point of the show. Because if you think about it, they have already, like, he's trying to find that out too. Mm-hmm. He has already, before we finish the whole thing, you remember he actually theorized one or two things that could have happened.
Exactly.
Trying to find a scientific explanation to it.
So going back to the explanation, the astronauts got into the Soyuz and they landed back on Earth because they saw what's going on and they realized, the issue. I think even at the station, they were able to look at, the webcams that we can see nowadays. Mm-hmm. And you could see how everything was, everyone was petrified. So they went down. And these are the people that actually started, back in 2019, they started civilization again. Mm-hmm. So that is what brought some questions for us. Like, for example, 3,000 years, from there, it doesn't seem to me the amount of people on that village justifies the amount of time on the planet.
Here's my thing. For 3,000 years, maybe. For 37,000 years, definitely not.
Because, granted, there should
be hundreds of clans by 37,000 years.
Yeah.
If they're reproducing 3,000 years, we're talking about what, 30 generations? 3,700, 37 generations?
Yes.
Giving 100 years of lifespan?
So that's one of the questions.
So that's not a lot. Now, if you think about 37,000 years, there's first not gonna be trace already of DNA or resemblance on the villagers to the astronauts. Also, they will be thousands and thousands by then.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
So yeah, I was looking into that, and it doesn't, like you said, there should have been a lot more people than what we see in the village. Another thing that I was wondering is, these people were astronauts. Granted, they were not scientists. I gave them that. You know, usually when you have a mission for astronauts, you pick the astronauts best for the need of the mission. So you might have a doctor, you might have a botanist, you have to pick an expert based on the mission that you want that
all the research, yeah.
Exactly. So why didn't we have some sort of expert specialist on this village on whatever speciality any of the astronauts had? Because it's obviously they had kids. And you can pass knowledge from generation to generation.
Yeah.
The only knowledge that was passed down was from Senku's dad as a story that went from generation to generation.
And he was a teacher.
Exactly.
He was not a specialist or something.
So, that's another question that I had. And also, we know that when you tell story, there is a, how they call that? There's a loss in communication. There's always a loss in communication.
Exactly the same that I was telling about you staying conscious for so long. Same thing about story that is being told over generations. It loses the integrity of the data over time.
So if you tell someone something, that person is going to hear it, is going to interpret based on how their perception to what you are saying, and he's going to retain a version of what you said in their head. So that person is going to tell a third person, I can guarantee you it's not going to be exactly the same. There's going to be some changes based on the perception of that person.
I mean, think about it. Even if you change a word every time that is being said, that's enough to over time have a complete different story. Paraphrased.
So that's another thing that I found interesting is how the priestess of this village kept the stories of the, how do they call
the founders?
The founders. And this story is somewhat, and I know it's never going to be exactly the same, but it is very coherent after 3,000 years.
Yep.
And it doesn't seem right to me that it would be coherent.
I mean, the excuse behind it is she's a priestess. There's being always a priestess. And the priestess is that single person that is on the duty of remember these stories, tell it to the people, and tell it to their predecessor.
So their sole job is to make sure the authenticity of the story and the error-free. And again, I get that. And if you think about it, it's always going to be so let's say, for example, the first priestess, right, tells the second priestess. Back to how I was saying it. The second priestess is going to hear the story from the first priestess. And he's going to retain a version of what she says because of her perception of reality. So now this person is going to tell the same stories to the third priestess. It's going to tell a version of what she thought the story was, based on her perception, to the third one. And the third one is going to hear it and interpret in her perception. So even on 3 tellings, or let's say 3 generations,
a lot could change.
A lot has changed.
Yeah.
So I really want to hear, I don't know if you guys have heard of this show before. It's definitely new to me. And I am very interested to hear from you guys. If you've never seen it, especially, and you decide to watch the show, tell me what your perception is of this show. I find it, I think if you're a sci-fi lover and especially likes science, this show should appeal to you.
Most definitely.
And I really am really curious to see what you think about this show. So if you can reach out to us on Twitter or even go to our Discord and let's talk about this show. Let me hear what you think. What is your perception of the show? What you like the most about this show?
Yeah, absolutely. Join our Discord channel and let's have a talk about it. And don't forget, get excited.
Well, this is the end of the show for now. Please let us know if you like this episode.
And if you have any ideas about which topics you would like us to discuss in the next episodes, reach out. We'll love to hear from you.
Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Sci-Fi Remnant. And if you like this podcast, please share it.
And don't forget to rate us in your favorite podcast platform. This will help us grow. Thank you so much.
See you next time. This is Science Fiction Remnant, signing off.